If you rewind the last 2 seasons of the WNBA, most people will swear they could see every major storyline coming. The debates, the rivalries, the overnight superstars. None of it was subtle. But what absolutely no one predicted was the strange, almost eerie silence coming from Indianapolis. While analysts spent their days arguing over box scores and rookie awards, the front office of the Indiana Fever was quietly engineering something far bigger than a playoff run. They were constructing the blueprint for a financial and competitive takeover that could flip the entire league upside down. And the wildest part? They did it without saying a single public word. Behind the closed doors of Fever headquarters, a clock has been ticking toward a date most fans don't even know matters: the 2026 free agency window. To casual viewers, it's just another off-season. But to the individuals pulling the strings in the back office, it's the launchpad for a complete redefinition of what a WNBA franchise can be. Every contract decision, every strategic leak, every name mysteriously linked to Indiana, none of it has been random. It's been part of a long game plan designed to weaponize the largest financial shift in women's basketball history. And the craziest part is this: the Fever aren't planning to compete with the rest of the league. They're planning to outrun it, outspend it, outmaneuver it. They want to build a roster so financially powerful and structurally unbreakable that even teams like the Aces and Liberty will be forced to adjust their entire economic model just to keep up. What the Fever are quietly assembling behind the scenes is nothing short of a dynasty blueprint, and the biggest insiders are already calling it the future checkbook revolution of the WNBA. But none of this is happening by accident. None of it is luck. And none of it is wishful thinking. It all starts with a single architect, someone who understands money, leverage, timing, and power better than almost anyone in women's basketball. Her return created a ripple that has now turned into a tidal wave, and once you understand her role in this covert operation, everything else suddenly makes sense. To understand why the Fever's 2026 plan feels so calculated, so precise, and so dangerously ambitious, you have to look at the person sitting in the luxury box instead of the players running up and down the floor. The silent engine behind this entire operation is Kelly Krauskopf, a name that casual fans may gloss over, but insiders know as one of the most strategic minds the league has ever seen. Her return to the Fever wasn't just a familiar face coming home. It was the equivalent of a financial weapons expert being dropped into a room full of people still reading last decade's playbook. Most fans remember Krauskopf as the architect of the 2012 Indiana Fever championship team. Back then, she turned a mid-market franchise into a gritty powerhouse built on defense, discipline, and leadership. But what people often forget is everything she did after leaving the WNBA. Her years with the Indiana Pacers didn't just expand her resume. They rewired the way she thinks about roster building entirely. She wasn't just watching top-tier NBA organizations navigate the complexities of massive contracts. She was helping shape the strategies behind them. That's what makes her return so dangerous for every other WNBA general manager. Krauskopf now operates with an NBA mind in a WNBA world. She understands luxury taxes, supermax mechanics, front-loaded deals, balloon structures, and cap spikes the way a chess master understands openings and counterattacks. And 2026 isn't just another year on the calendar for her. It is the perfect storm, the moment when the WNBA's financial ceiling finally shatters. While other front offices are budgeting carefully, trying to survive under the old rules, Krauskopf is preparing to treat the WNBA like a major market NBA franchise. She knows how the Warriors exploited the 2016 cap spike to create one of the most unstoppable rosters of the decade. She knows how super teams are built, not through luck, but through timing, patience, and the willingness to spend aggressively when everyone else is afraid. That's exactly why she has drawn a circle around 2026 in permanent marker. She sees what many others still pretend not to notice. The old financial barriers in women's basketball are about to disintegrate. And when the money floods in, she wants Indiana to be the first franchise ready to convert cash into power. That is the real heartbeat behind this operation. She isn't just planning for a competitive team. She is planning for an era, an empire. And the fuel behind this empire isn't just strategy or vision. It's math. Cold, hard, undeniable math. Because when you understand the numbers driving this upcoming financial explosion, you realize why the Fever are preparing to spend money the league has never seen before, and why 2026 could change every salary discussion for a decade. For decades, the WNBA lived inside a financial cage. The league survived, sure, but it did so on razor-thin margins, modest TV deals, and owners who saw the game as a long-term investment rather than an immediate economic force. Salaries stayed low, the cap barely moved, and every negotiation felt like a polite tug-of-war over a very small pie. The standard defense from front offices was always the same: we'd pay players more if the revenue existed. And for a while, that excuse was true. But then something happened that no one, not analysts, not executives, not even the players, fully understood the magnitude of until the ink was dry. The WNBA secured a media rights deal worth $2.2 billion over 11 years. It wasn't an incremental step forward. It wasn't a gentle rise. It was an economic detonation. A financial shockwave powerful enough to reshape the foundation of the league in a single stroke. Overnight, the WNBA went from a niche sports investment to a legitimate entertainment property with global financial weight behind it. This deal is the beating heart of the Fever's 2026 plan. It is the oxygen that allows Krauskopf's strategy to breathe. Because when that revenue officially hits the books, the salary cap won't just increase, it will explode. What was once a tight budget built on careful accounting is about to become a wide-open vault. And the front office in Indiana knows exactly what that means. The teams that spend aggressively first will control the talent market long before anyone else realizes the rules have changed. It's no coincidence the WNBPA opted out of the current collective bargaining agreement almost immediately after the media deal was finalized. Players saw the receipts, and they know the financial landscape is about to shift in their favor. They want a bigger slice, and they deserve it. But what most teams haven't fully acknowledged yet is just how big that slice will be. The projections inside certain front offices, particularly Indiana's, suggest that maximum salaries could jump from the low $200,000 range to $700,000 or even $800,000 within a single off-season. Think about that. 1 year you're arguing over $150,000 contracts. The next, you're paying a superstar nearly $1 million to stay. That kind of spike isn't normal. It isn't gentle. It's a landslide. It's the kind of financial shift that rewards teams with vision and punishes those who rely on tradition. Most franchises are preparing for this change like it's a mild breeze. The Fever are preparing like it's a hurricane. They're not making decisions based on what players are worth today. They're making decisions based on what the market will demand tomorrow. And when the cap surges upward, they want to be the franchise with the deepest war chest and the clearest strategy. They want to walk into free agency with the ability to offer contracts that make agents freeze, blink twice, and say, "Wait, you're offering how much?" This is the financial revolution fueling everything you're about to hear. The upcoming cap spike isn't a footnote, it's the fuse. And once you understand how much money is in play, you start to see why Indiana is preparing to drop unprecedented bags on 3 specific players who form the spine of their takeover strategy. And it all starts with a superstar whose impact is bigger than her stat line, bigger than her team, and bigger than the league itself. There are stars in sports, and then there are economic engines, athletes whose presence alone rewrites the financial landscape around them. Caitlin Clark isn't just a player the Fever drafted. She's a living marketplace. A one-woman economy. A revenue generator so powerful that her rookie season didn't just break records, it disrupted entire business models. When she signed her rookie contract, the world reacted with disbelief. The headlines were loud, the memes were everywhere, and the outrage was justified. A global superstar earning barely over $76,000 felt like a glitch in the system. But Clark didn't flinch. She didn't complain, didn't demand special treatment, didn't play the diva role that many expected. She simply went to work. And as she did, the Fever's financial world began to mutate around her. Suddenly, every road game felt like a tour stop. Tickets vanished minutes after release. Merchandise sales spiked so aggressively that the team store literally couldn't restock fast enough. Ratings surged, sponsorships multiplied, and the Fever transformed from a struggling franchise into the most watched and most profitable team in the league. This is why the front office isn't thinking of Clark as a typical max contract player. They're thinking of her as an asset that generates 7 figures before she even touches the court. Her value isn't just in points or assists, it's in ticket sales, jersey revenue, national TV slots, and the army of fans she brings with her everywhere she goes. She's the financial lifeline that allows Indiana to pursue a super team strategy without blinking. But the Fever also knows something the public hasn't fully processed yet. Clark has leverage, dangerous leverage. The rise of the new unrivaled league changed everything. That Miami-based, 3-on-3 disruptor isn't offering pocket change. They're dangling equity, 6-figure payouts for short seasons, and the kind of financial freedom the WNBA has never been able to match. For a player of Clark's status, unrivaled could realistically triple her earnings with a fraction of the physical wear and tear. And that's the Fever's nightmare scenario. If Clark ever decides that 40 grueling games in the WNBA aren't worth it, Indiana loses more than a superstar. They lose the entire economic ecosystem she created. That's why the front office is preparing something unprecedented. A supermax package designed to crush every competing offer, even from unrivaled. Insiders claim the Fever are crafting a structure that combines WNBA salary with marketing deals, local endorsements, and guaranteed bonuses that push her earnings comfortably into the $1 million range. Not out of charity, not out of sentiment, but out of necessity. Because the Fever understand one core truth. You don't lowball the person who keeps the lights on. Clark isn't just their player, she's their business model. But even the strongest engine needs support. The Fever learned early in the season that no matter how brilliant Clark is, she cannot carry 5 defenders on her back. She needed someone who could turn pressure into open space. Someone who could stretch the floor, punish double teams, and read her movements like a second language. And unexpectedly, unbelievably, that help arrived from a player no one saw coming. At the beginning of the season, few people outside Indiana even bothered to say Lexie Hull's name in conversations about the Fever's future. She was a role player, a hustler, someone analysts described with polite words like energy, effort, and defensive upside. Those are the kinds of terms front offices usually reserve for players who can be replaced without anyone noticing. Hull wasn't on breakout lists, she wasn't on trade boards, and she certainly wasn't in long-term franchise planning discussions. She was, in every measurable way, fighting for survival. Someone trying to prove she belonged in a league that cuts talent as quickly as it discovers it. But then something happened that changed everything. As defenses around the league began swarming Caitlin Clark with double teams, traps, and blitzes, Indiana needed someone, anyone, who could punish opponents for abandoning their assignments. And in that chaos, Hull didn't just rise to the moment. She detonated. Her shot became a weapon. Her positioning became intuitive. And her chemistry with Clark shifted from accidental to unstoppable. It wasn't just that she hit open threes, it was how she hit them. Calm, quick, cold-blooded, and exactly when Clark needed her to. Within weeks, Hull went from a fringe player to the league's most efficient three-point shooter. Teams didn't respect her at first. Then they feared her. Defenses had to make a cruel decision: leave Hull open and watch her pour in threes, or collapse on her and let Clark dissect them with surgical precision. It was basketball geometry at its purest, a spacing partnership that turned the Fever's offense into a puzzle almost impossible to solve. That synergy created something priceless: trust. Real, on-court trust. The kind that normally takes years to build. Clark and Hull developed a rhythm that looked less like teammates learning each other and more like veterans completing each other's sentences. They saw the floor the same way. They reacted at the same beat. And suddenly, the Fever realized they weren't looking at a temporary hot streak, they were looking at a cornerstone. Inside the front office, Hull's name moved from the rotation piece column all the way to the do not touch list. Every franchise has one of those lists, the players you simply refuse to trade, regardless of the offer. Hull landed there not because of her stats, but because of what she means to the superstar who holds the keys to the franchise's future. If Clark is the engine, Hull is the turbocharger. Remove her, and the system loses its speed, its spacing, its balance. That's why the Fever are preparing to offer Hull something that would have sounded ridiculous just 2 years ago: a contract that treats her like a co-star, not a role player. Analysts are already whispering about a massive 2026 extension, one that reflects the new financial reality of the league and rewards her transformation into one of the most lethal shooters in the game. Because Indiana knows the truth. If they disrespect Hull at the negotiation table, they risk something far bigger than losing a shooter. They risk losing Clark's trust, maybe even her future loyalty. But securing the duo isn't enough. Not when the league has made it clear that physical play, cheap shots, and intimidation are weapons used freely against Clark. The Fever learned the hard way that skill alone doesn't win wars. Sometimes, you need someone whose job is to make sure your star never hits the floor without consequences. And Indiana has already identified exactly who that enforcer should be. Every great basketball dynasty has a protector. Someone who doesn't just play hard but plays mean. Someone who turns every loose ball into a collision and every cheap shot into a confrontation. The Fever, for all their talent and potential, didn't have that kind of player this season. And the whole league saw it. Every time Caitlin Clark got shoved, bumped, or blindsided, Indiana's roster responded with hesitation instead of fire. They were skilled, they were improving, but they weren't feared. And in the WNBA, respect is optional. Fear is currency. That's why the Fever's front office has quietly set their sights on the most polarizing enforcer in the league, Sophie Cunningham. Cunningham isn't just a shooter or a role player. She is chaos wrapped in confidence. She talks trash like it's her native language. She plays with a reckless intensity that borders on theatrical, and she has a gift for getting under the skin of every opponent within a 10-foot radius. Some players drain threes. Some players disrupt offenses. Cunningham does both, and she does it while making half the league roll their eyes and the other half clench their fists. But here's the part that makes her dangerous in Indiana's plan. She becomes a free agent right as the cap spike hits. Most franchises see Cunningham as a luxury, a piece that's nice to have but not essential. Indiana sees her as the missing ingredient to their identity. They don't just want to be skilled, they want to be intimidating. They want opponents to think twice before crowding Clark at half court or contesting Hull's jumper with an elbow. They want someone who will set a tone the moment the ball goes up, someone who will respond to physical play with something a little louder than polite frustration. And that's why insiders are already whispering that Indiana is preparing to overpay for her. Not by a little, by a lot. Because every team has a price. And the Fever plan to meet Cunningham's number before anyone else realizes how serious they are. A contract big enough to pull her away from Phoenix, big enough to reshape their culture, and big enough to signal to the entire league that the days of bullying Clark are officially over. Picture this: Clark running the offense, Hull stretching the floor, and Cunningham patrolling the wings like a bodyguard with a jumper. That trio doesn't just score, it shifts the psychological temperature of the game. Suddenly, defenders can't swarm Clark without risking retaliation. Suddenly, hard fouls come with consequences. Suddenly, the Fever aren't just a team, they're a threat. This is the version of Indiana the front office wants in 2026. Talented enough to win, tough enough to keep winning, and aggressive enough to rewrite how the franchise is perceived. No more lovable underdogs. No more soft reputations. No more, they're young, give them time. They want the rest of the league to hate playing them. They want a roster so tightly constructed that every opponent knows exactly what's coming. Pressure, speed, shooting, and a whole lot of attitude. But Cunningham is only one piece of the puzzle. The Fever aren't just building a lineup, they're building a philosophy, a mentality, a culture. And that culture requires more than talent. It requires power. Real, economic power. Because the next phase of Indiana's plan isn't about basketball at all. It's about reshaping the league's economy so drastically that every other team is forced to respond. If Indiana's plan were only about basketball, the league could handle it. Teams adapt to new schemes. Coaches counter new systems. Rosters adjust, evolve, and rebuild. But what the Fever are setting in motion isn't just a shift in playstyle. It's a shift in economics, and that's what makes this next phase so explosive. Because once Indiana opens the vault in 2026, the entire WNBA salary landscape is going to warp around them like gravity bending light. 4 years, super teams like the Aces and Liberty held power because they spent just a little more aggressively, recruited a little more efficiently, and assembled talent before everyone else understood the value of stacking stars. But all of that was done under the constraints of a smaller, tighter cap. A system where spending big still meant spending carefully. The 2026 spike changes that. It turns the strategic advantage from "we have stars" into "we have capital." And Indiana is preparing to swing that capital like a sledgehammer. Here's the ripple effect insiders are already predicting. The moment the Fever sign Clark to a supermax, extend Hull, and pull Cunningham into the fold, every agent in the league will demand the same treatment for their clients. It won't matter if the players have similar stats or similar value. What will matter is the precedent. If Hull gets paid like a co-star, players on other teams will argue that they deserve the same. If Cunningham gets a massive overpay as an enforcer, similar players will expect equal or better deals. Suddenly, the market shifts, not organically, not gradually, but violently. Salaries climb. Expectations rise. Negotiations become battles instead of conversations. And teams that aren't financially prepared will be crushed under the weight of contracts they never anticipated having to offer. This is what economic dominance looks like in sports. One franchise with vision forces everyone else to rewrite their rulebook. The same way the Warriors' salary spike in 2016 changed the NBA, the Fever's strategy could force the WNBA into a new era of spending where the middle class shrinks, the top tier expands, and smart franchises either adapt or drown. Small market teams? They're in trouble. Owners who prefer conservative spending? They're about to face a crisis. Teams relying on culture instead of cash? Good luck keeping your stars. Because Indiana isn't just building a roster, they're building a benchmark. Once their numbers hit the books, every negotiation around the league will point back to them. Every agent will use their deals as leverage. Every player will reference their salaries. And every team will be forced into an uncomfortable reality. To keep up with Indiana, you're going to have to pay a lot more than you ever planned. And this isn't a coincidence. It's part of the plan. Indiana wants to force the rest of the league to spend money they aren't ready to spend. They want to stretch thin the teams that rely on stability. They want to create a financial environment where the richest, smartest, most aggressive franchises thrive, and everyone else scrambles to survive. It's ruthless. It's strategic. And it's exactly how dynasties are born. But there's another side to this arms race, one that's even bigger than the WNBA. Because Indiana isn't just battling other teams anymore. They're competing against an entirely different league with an entirely different business model. And if they don't win that fight, everything they're building could collapse overnight. On the surface, the WNBA's biggest competitors are the teams standing across from each other on the court. The Aces, the Liberty, the Lynx, those are the opponents fans see and analysts talk about. But the Fever's front office knows the real danger isn't wearing another team's jersey. It isn't even inside the league. The most serious threat to everything they're building comes from an entirely different battlefield. One that doesn't play by the same rules, doesn't answer to the same financial limitations, and doesn't care about tradition. That threat is unrivaled, the 3-on-3 league founded by Breanna Stewart, Napheesa Collier, and a growing list of the game's most influential superstars. It's not a gimmick league. It's not a summer experiment. It's a disruptor. A fully funded, privately backed challenger that is offering something the WNBA has never been able to match. Equity. Actual ownership. A financial stake in the league's growth. That alone flips the entire logic of professional sports on its head. Unrivaled isn't just paying large salaries. They're offering wealth-building opportunities. They're giving players a chance to earn more in a few weeks in Miami than they'll make in an entire WNBA season. And when those offers landed in inboxes around the league, a quiet wave of panic spread through front offices. Because once players start thinking like investors instead of employees, the old model collapses. Traditional contracts feel ancient. Rookie deals feel insulting. Even max contracts suddenly feel small. And Indiana knows this. They know that if Unrivaled succeeds, the WNBA becomes a secondary option for many stars. They know that Clark, who draws global attention effortlessly, could walk into a boardroom at Unrivaled and immediately be offered ownership shares, bonuses, brand deals, and a schedule that won't destroy her knees or her back. That's why the Fever's financial aggression isn't just ambition, it's survival. If Clark ever chooses unrivaled over the WNBA, Indiana loses not only their superstar but the entire economic engine that fuels this dynasty plan. The surge in ticket sales, the spike in merchandise, the sellout streak, all of it evaporates instantly. And if Clark goes, more players might follow. Suddenly, the league's biggest attraction becomes its biggest threat. This is the real reason Indiana is preparing supermax structures and unprecedented extensions. It's why they're locking in Hull, targeting Cunningham, stockpiling cap space, and preparing to spend like they've never spent before. Because they aren't just competing for titles, they're competing to keep the league relevant. They're competing to keep their own roster intact. They're competing to ensure that when players choose between WNBA stability and unrivaled equity, the decision isn't as easy as it sounds. And this financial pressure is already pushing teams to rethink long-term strategies. Some franchises are quietly preparing counteroffers. Others are lobbying for changes in the new CBA. A few are pretending the threat doesn't exist. Those will be the ones caught off guard. But Indiana, they're preparing for war. A salary war. A talent war. A relevance war. Because if they don't win this battle, they lose everything, no matter how good their roster looks on paper. Clark's Supermax is a shield against unrivaled's influence. Hull's extension protects Clark's comfort. Cunningham's signing protects Clark's body. Every piece of this plan is connected. Every move is calculated to eliminate risk. But the Fever's rising power isn't just about keeping threats away. It's also about unleashing the full financial potential of something the league has never experienced before. The Clark effect. And that effect is already rewriting everything. Long before the Fever drafted Caitlin Clark, the franchise was known for grit, history, and loyalty, but never money. They were a small market team, operating on small market margins. A franchise that fought for relevance, fought for fans, and fought for every dollar they brought in. But the moment Clark arrived, Indiana's entire financial identity mutated into something the league had never seen before. The Clark effect wasn't subtle. It wasn't gradual. It hit like a meteor. Attendance didn't just rise. It exploded. Indiana instantly became the most watched and most traveled-to team in the league. Home games sold out. Road games sold out. Ticket resale prices reached NBA numbers. Every city Clark stepped into saw crowds that dwarfed even playoff atmospheres. Camera crews doubled. Media presence tripled. Merchandise racks emptied. And for the first time in years, the Fever weren't a struggling franchise. They were a profit machine. The revenue wasn't incremental. It was transformational. Reporters kept using phrases like increased interest or boosted visibility, but those terms don't capture the full reality. What Clark did was reshape the entire profit model of the WNBA. Her presence didn't just make the Fever money, it made the league money. She turned games into events. She turned highlights into global social content. She turned jersey sales into monthly restocking emergencies. And she turned Indiana from a poverty franchise into the financial heavyweight of the sport. This is what makes Indiana's 2026 plan so dangerous for the rest of the league. They're the only team with a true economic engine powering their decisions. While other franchises hesitate because they're calculating risk, Indiana is operating with a self-sustaining ecosystem. The money they earn from Clark's popularity doesn't just cover contracts, it funds future moves. Every extension, every acquisition, every aggressive salary projection is backed by a fan base that arrived the moment Clark did. The Fever don't just have a superstar. They have a revenue cycle. Fans buy Clark jerseys, team earns profits, profits fund star acquisitions, stars win game, winning sells more tickets, tickets generate more revenue, revenue strengthens the roster again. No other franchise in the league has this loop. No one is even close. And that's why the Fever aren't afraid to spend when 2026 arrives. Their financial engine doesn't rely on hope. It relies on math. They know the money is coming because it's already flowing in. But Indiana understands a deeper truth. The Clark effect is powerful, but it's also vulnerable. Superstars don't wait forever. They don't tolerate mediocrity. They don't sign long-term contracts with teams that fail to match their ambition. And Clark is smart enough to know her value, both as a player and as a global brand. That's why the front office refuses to let 2026 be a wait-and-see moment. They're not building slowly. They're not planning cautiously. They're building aggressively now because they know the window to secure Clark's loyalty is open, but not guaranteed to stay open. If they don't surround her with championship-level talent, they risk repeating the cautionary tales of other leagues, where generational stars wasted years on teams that couldn't match their greatness. Indiana refuses to let that happen. They know that to keep Clark, they need to keep winning. To keep winning, they need Hull. To protect Hull, they need Cunningham. To hold the entire system together, they need a roster deeper than anything the league has ever built. And that brings us to the final, most ambitious part of Indiana's strategy. Something that will either launch a dynasty or blow up in their faces. Because building a super team is one thing. Maintaining it requires something far more volatile. An all-in gamble that risks everything the franchise has built. Every dominant era in sports begins with a gamble. One bold decision that looks brilliant if it works and catastrophic if it doesn't. And the Indiana Fever are approaching a moment that will test whether they're building a long-term dynasty or playing with financial fire. Because the truth is this: their 2026 plan is not safe. It is not cautious. It is not guaranteed. It is a high-risk, high-reward maneuver that could either elevate the franchise into history or send it crashing back into the shadows it just escaped. The Fever's blueprint depends on a fragile triangle: Clark, Hull, and Cunningham. And each corner of that triangle comes with enormous risk. Clark's health is non-negotiable. Her body is the engine of the entire operation, the magnet for global attention, and the primary reason Indiana can spend like a heavyweight. One wrong landing, one awkward twist, one unlucky fall, and the entire economic machine built around her becomes unstable. Teams can build systems. They can build depth. But they can't build a replacement for the singular force that Clark represents. Hull's breakout, as miraculous as it was, still has skeptics circling it. Sharp shooting seasons can be streaky. Chemistry can fade. Confidence can wobble. The Fever are preparing to commit a massive portion of their 2026 cap to someone who, just months ago, was considered expendable. If Hull's shooting regresses or her playmaking stalls, Indiana could find themselves locked into a contract that limits flexibility instead of enhancing it. And then there's Cunningham, the most volatile piece of the puzzle. Bringing in a player known for intensity is a double-edged sword. That fire can fuel a team, ignite a crowd, and enforce boundaries that opponents fear crossing. But it can also disrupt chemistry, fracture locker rooms, and turn internal tensions into public meltdowns. Enforcers bring edge, but they also bring unpredictability. In a worst-case scenario, the Fever could wind up paying superstar money for a personality clash that undermines everything they're trying to build. Then there's the cap itself, the wild card of 2026. Everyone expects it to rise. Everyone expects salaries to surge. But until the new CBA is finalized, nothing is certain. A hard cap could appear out of nowhere. Restrictions on supermax stacking could tighten. Contract structures could be rewritten. Indiana is planning for a future that could shift overnight, and if the rules change in the wrong direction, their aggressive strategy could leave them trapped in a maze with no exit. But here's the part that makes this gamble so compelling. Indiana knows all of this, and they're pushing forward anyway. Because the greatest risk in professional sports isn't spending too much money. It's failing to spend when you have a once-in-a-generation star. Look around the sports world. At Luka, at Dame, at countless MVP-level players who wasted years on franchises that hesitated, waited, hoped for the perfect moment. That moment never came. Their primes were drained by caution, patience, and fear. Indiana refuses to become another cautionary tale. They understand that greatness doesn't wait. And dynasties don't form by accident. You don't stumble into an era. You build it, piece by piece, check by check, risk by risk. That's what the Fever are doing. They are choosing the path with the highest ceiling, even if it's also the one with the deepest pitfalls. They're betting their future, their finances, and their reputation on a plan that demands precision, timing, and belief. If it works, Indiana becomes the WNBA's first true financial juggernaut. A franchise that recruits stars, dictates market value, and defines the next decade of basketball. If it fails, The collapse will be loud, public, and unforgiving. But that's the thing about gambling with potential greatness. Playing it safe guarantees you never reach it. Swinging big at least gives you a chance. And Indiana is swinging with everything they have. As the league inches closer to the 2026 free agency window, the WNBA we once knew is already disappearing in the rearview mirror. What's coming is a new era. Faster, richer, louder, and far more competitive than anything the sport has ever seen. And at the center of that transformation is a franchise that spent years fighting for relevance but is now fighting for dominance. The Indiana Fever. Their plan isn't just bold. It isn't just expensive. It isn't just ambitious. It's historic. If Indiana manages to execute every part of this blueprint, the league will feel the consequences for a decade. Player salaries will spike. Contract negotiations will shift. Rival teams will panic, adapt, or crumble under the pressure. Agents will use Indiana's offers like weapons. Owners will be forced into a new era of spending whether they like it or not. And the entire economic structure of women's basketball will be reshaped around a single franchise that dared to think bigger while everyone else played it safe. Clark will become the highest-paid women's basketball star on the planet. Hull will secure generational stability as the unexpected sharpshooting co-star. Cunningham will bring the bite, the edge, the steel-plated identity the Fever have lacked for years. And behind all of it sits Kelly Krauskopf, running the calculus, reading the future, and pushing this franchise toward a level of power the WNBA has never had to prepare for. But the most important truth is this. Nothing in this plan is guaranteed. Not the championships. Not the chemistry. Not the longevity. Not even the financial certainty the Fever are betting on. It is all a gamble. A massive franchise-altering gamble that could etch Indiana into the history books as the architects of the WNBA's first true dynasty. Or leave them staring at the ruins of a plan that reached too far, too fast. What makes this story so fascinating is that you aren't watching a team experiment with possibilities. You're watching a team rewrite the rules of an entire league in real time. Indiana isn't just preparing for 2026, they're trying to take control of it. They're trying to take control of the future. And whether they succeed or fail, the aftermath will shape the WNBA for years. This isn't just basketball. It's business. It's power. It's evolution. And the Fever are standing at the center of the storm, pen in hand, ready to sign the checks that could change everything. If you've made it all the way through this breakdown, you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel was built for. Curious, sharp, and hungry for deeper stories beneath the surface of the sports world. This channel is still small, and every single subscriber makes a massive impact on how far these videos can reach. So if you enjoyed this deep dive and want more high-level analysis like this, do me a quick favor. Subscribe to the channel. It helps the algorithm know this content is worth pushing to more people. Like the video, it tells YouTube the topic deserves attention. Drop a comment. Even one sentence helps boost engagement more than you might think. Your support isn't just appreciated. It directly helps this channel grow and allows me to keep creating technical, well-researched videos like this. Thank you for watching. And trust me, 2026 is going to be wild.